What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
Yeah. So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yes, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich statement. We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
9:30 on Wednesday, the 12th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning to you. So, final roll of the dice. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, promises £17 billion in tax cuts and warns that a vote for Reform UK would lead to a decade of Labour rule.
And out of touch, in a TV interview to be broadcast later, Rishi Sunak was asked what he had to live without while he was growing up. Take a listen to his answer.
All sorts of things. So, like lots of people, there'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? But famously, Sky TV. So.
Oh, it's awkward, that, isn't it? The plight of the potholes. Labour's turning to local issues, promising to fix 1 million potholes every year if they come into power.
And Farage under attack again. A man has been arrested for throwing a rock at the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, while he was on the campaign trail. He says it simply won't stop him campaigning.
Got David Davis in the studio from just after the news, actually, in just a moment. And also Kevin Maguire will be here. That will be pretty lively, I'm sure. Don't go anywhere. GBnews.com/your say to have your say on our show this morning. First, though, the very latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good morning to you. It's 9:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The UK economy failed to grow in April in a blow to Rishi Sunak's claim the country's turned a corner. Official figures show growth flatlined to 0%, down from 0.4% in March, in line with economists' expectations. Retail sales were down and construction output also contracted, partly because of the wet weather in April. The Lib Dems say the Tories have utterly failed to deliver on their promises, and Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says it's further evidence their economic plan isn't working.
It's this Prime Minister and this Chancellor that has presided over this state of affairs with an economy that's barely grown these last 14 years. Yesterday, the Prime Minister published a desperate wish list of giveaways, but frankly, the money is not there. And if the Prime Minister did have a chance to implement this, what would end up happening is that mortgages would go up by £4,800 for the average family. The country can't afford 5 more years of the Conservatives. Only Labour has a plan to grow our economy and tackle the cost of living crisis.
However, the Tories say today's figures show the economy actually grew by 0.7% in the 3 months to April. Grant Shapps says people will feel the benefits.
There are £17 billion essentially of tax cuts, particularly to national insurance in there, but also assistance for people through things like Help to Buy. So you'll be able to buy a house with a 5% deposit, will permanently scrap stamp duty. And for pensioners, we'll have triple lock plus. That means your pension under the Conservatives, your state pension will never be taxed, unlike under Starmer, who will tax your pension.
And Labour says it will fix 1 million potholes every year if the party wins the general election. They claim the damage has caused by poorly maintained roads cost drivers on average £250 or almost £500 million last year. Labour says it will direct special funding to councils to fix potholes and has promised to bring down the cost of car insurance. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
So, Rishi Sunak admitted he had to live without Sky Television as a child. It was apparently a terrible hardship. Let's take a listen to this interview he's done as part of the election campaign.
But before that...
We're going to tell you what happened yesterday. Of course, we had the manifesto launch.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Under Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the taxpayer has been losing £1 million every single hour to benefit fraud and error. That is their record. And there are savings to be made. But the idea that the Conservatives' proposals can save £12 billion is pure fiction.
We believe in the long term we need to be back at the heart of Europe. But we're being really clear that we're not going to pretend that's going to be easy. Regrettably, the Conservative Party have so poisoned Britain's relationship with our nearest neighbours, our allies. They've undermined trust.
And I may need to change tactics slightly. But I'm going to make one promise to you and the tens of thousands watching this live, online, and the media. And my promise is this: I will not surrender to the mob. I will not stop campaigning. This democratic process must continue.
It's a complete gift for him, isn't it?
Louts. Trump effect.
Exactly. Well, in the studio is the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, my old sparring partner Kevin Maguire, and David Davis, former Brexit Secretary. David, it is a gift for Farage, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, every time that happens, he gets him on the front page, as it were.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give in to the mob. I thought he was leading it.
That's a different mob, David.
I know.
But that was a good quip, though, because he paints himself as the victim, and he was at that moment. But who's filming the attack? It's his own side, and then he puts it on the web. I'm not saying they...
Well, they were filming the crowd. The streets were full of people, Kevin, that were applauding him and waving at him.
He would have gone to Barnsley, and few people would have noticed if that idiot hadn't thrown a cup and then some wet cement and been arrested and deserves whatever is coming their way if found guilty. But it is a gift, and those protesters, it's totally counterproductive to whatever cause they have.
Yeah. Political stupidity is not a prosecutable crime, unfortunately.
No,
but it does play to the Trump thing. I'm the anti-establishment candidate.
Yes, it does.
And reform is proving, David, is it not an existential threat to the Tory party?
Well, it's intended to be. I mean, it's very dangerous to measure from your own constituency because it's anecdotal rather than data. I'm not seeing much of it at the moment. But he wants to destroy the Tory party. He said it in terms, and it's Nigel can always keep two impossible ideas in his mind at the same time, right? He's an old mate of mine. On the one hand, he's saying he wants to destroy the Tory party. The other hand, he wants to lead it.
Yes.
The likelihood, if he's remotely successful with the first, is he's never going to be let in the second.
But he would. But his ambition, therefore, would be to destroy it in the short term and build it back with him at the helm, maybe in the longer term.
That indicates a degree of precision I've never seen in Nigel's politics. Listen, if he succeeds, I don't think he will, but if he succeeds, what he'll actually do is let Labour in for a couple of terms. And he keeps pretending, not a story he's done before, but he keeps pretending that Labour and Tories are identical. And they're plainly not. A lot of I think the reason I've got a lot of Tories in my constituency actually being quite determined to vote is just saying we're terrified of Labour. I had talked to a pensioner yesterday, and she said, I've just now started taking my pension. I'm terrified what's going to happen in the next few years.
What are they terrified about specifically? What are they terrified about?
In her case, taxes. It varies. But in her case, it was taxes and possibly some sort of burden on her pension. Remember Brown before raided pension funds and he damaged the pension industry, which she would depend on. He put limits on what we could do in terms of saving for our pensions. So she's worried about all that.
And Kevin, one of the things the Tories have done is they've said there'll be no tax on the basic pension. They're putting a lock on it. Because personal allowances are rising in 2028, and otherwise people might be drawn into it.
What they've said is another policy we have, freezing income tax thresholds up to 28, 29, which Labour will hit pensioners at some point.
Yeah.
Now the calculation is you'll get, I think it's 28p back in at the end of the period. You won't pay 28p on your pension, your state pension, if the Conservatives go through with that policy. But it's really, they're trying to say we're going to shield you from something else we're doing to everybody else. That's what it effectively is. More pensioners now pay tax than ever before. I think it's 60% because thresholds have been frozen and people's occupational pensions are taking them up. Yeah, occupational pensions. So I think it's 60% of pensioners now pay tax. It was something like half that not very long ago. So under the Conservatives, far more pensioners are paying tax.
You've got to be a little bit careful, Kevin, because bear in mind, pensioners are getting wealthier in the sense that their pensions are getting bigger.
That's a good thing.
And that, yeah, absolutely a good thing, you know. But it will pull them into into the zones which.
Yeah. But it's the freezing of the income tax threshold.
Yeah.
After you earn £12,500, you start paying.
And Labour is sticking with that policy.
All parties.
They're inheriting a mess.
Did the Tory manifesto yesterday? Is it going to move the dial, David? But the latest poll showing the Tories 18 points behind.
I think slowly it will. I mean, for a variety of reasons. Some of it just tone. I didn't see it yesterday. I was out on the streets, you know, knocking on doors and things. So I watched it at 6 o'clock this morning, which is I don't recommend. and the tone was, you know we've not got everything right. You know, which is the right tone. You know, I mean, bear in mind, we've had in the last few years a number of generational events from the 2008 crash through to the pandemic, through to the Ukraine war, the European war and so on. These are huge events which have had big impacts on the sort of national balance sheet, how much we owe and so on. And it limits what you can do. And he said, no, I haven't got everything right. And that's, I think, the right tone for this. You know.
This national service announcement, which just sort of appeared out of nowhere. Grant Shapps has been on the TV this morning explaining that it's actually only one weekend a month for a year, optional if you want to do it. That's a classic example of where it looked like Rishi Sunak was throwing something out, a bit of red meat for the right-leaning Conservative voters out there, but actually when you dig into it, it was just all style and no substance.
Now it looks like they nicked one of my ideas.
Yeah, well, you could talk about more reserve.
But you would want it to be a little more substantial.
What I wanted was to actually dramatically increase our reserve force.
Yeah.
And this could be a way of doing it. I mean, it depends if they do it like the Swedes. You know, actually, it's a privilege. You know, they have to sort of compete for it, you know. So you get really good sort of officer material, if you like. And, you know, if you get them in for 1 year, you encourage them to stay in reserves thereafter. That's what I would do. And I think, you know, listen, there is a reasonable argument to be made that we're in 1937 again with Putin and all that, yeah? And we ought to start preparing in a way that the country can live with. Now, we've had the odd general say, let's have conscription. That's not going to happen, not in this day and age. But this is a softer and more sensible way into it. And, you know, reserve soldiers, citizen armies, have won battles against regular armies since Marathon, you know, for 2,500 years. And we need to build a citizen army. It's a stepping stone.
Yeah, I don't accept we're 1937, but this national service idea has been so missold. It's fallen apart because I was under the impression from the launch that 30,000 18-year-olds would spend a year in the Army, Navy, Air Force, and now you find out it's going to be 25 days, so 12 weekends a year. Now, wasn't sold as that, so it's not national service at all. But if it is...
It was the way it was reported.
Yeah, well...
That's what they're saying.
Everybody got it wrong?
Yeah.
Everybody... Come on. Did they correct it? Now, if you're going to do that, and you're going to get more, and I can see greater reserves, I can see where David's coming from, and I've got some sympathy with that. But if you're going to do that, you've already got Army cadets and Sea Scouts. You would just expand them. Right. And give them money to try and get more 18-year-olds in, rather than thinking of setting up this completely new scheme which will undermine them.
I still think it's quite popular with a lot of voters. Let's have a quick listen to Rishi Sunak in this interview this morning where he was challenged about can he relate to ordinary voters. This is what he said.
All sorts of things. So, like lots of people, there'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? But famously, Sky TV. So,
Daily Mirror's mocked him on the front. What was your headline, Kevin?
Rishi, I didn't have a dishy.
Pretty good headline, isn't it?
It's a good headline, isn't it?
But that's what he gets so wrong, isn't it? You can say, I think he's... Am I right in that he's
I
thinking...
didn't have Sky TV either.
Yeah,
along with the indoor loo.
but I think to be honest and say, well, I didn't have an awful lot, but I didn't really want for much either. He's just pulled out Sky TV and said famously Sky TV. What does he mean?
You know what? I mean, this is my 11th election campaign, right? I'd fought 10 parliamentary campaigns before. In every single one, people make mistakes, and this is one of those.
Oh, come on. It started with the rainy lectern, David. It's been one mistake after another.
The rainy lectern, I think, was terrible staff work, I grant you that.
And then coming home from D-Day a little early, that's gone down very badly.
You know, you're going to tempt me to tell you a story. The 65th anniversary, right, of D-Day, I went to. Why? Because then the survivors were between 83 and 100 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought they wouldn't be there for much longer. So I went to that. I raised some money for people to go as well, for vets to go. And when I was going, you might remember this, Brown wasn't going at all.
That's absolutely right.
Until Obama was going. And then, in order to rub shoulders with Obama, he goes. The veterans were really furious. Yep. There they had a reason. That wasn't a diary mistake. That was a political decision by him. And you'll remember that.
I do, and he rightly got criticism for it.
Well, we didn't make much of it.
But we now know that Sunak thought of not going at all, and Grant Shapps was going to stand in for him.
No, but he went. You say not going at all. You mean for the last event?
No, for the initial event, the French thought he wasn't going.
Well, I tell you, that's ridiculous.
No.
That's right. No,
but when you go and you leave early... No,
I think Brown
has to take it. I think the Daily Mirror is slipping into fake news.
No, I think you'll find, David, this is quite common knowledge now. No. You may not want to know it.
Kevin, the idea the British Prime Minister was not going to be there on June the 6th is for the birds.
No.
Well, hang on. You would have said him coming back early to do an interview. To do an interview pre-recorded was for the birds.
I criticised it. He was always going to be there on June 6th. That is ridiculous, even by your standards.
I don't want to come between friends.
You can cover him. Grant Shapps was lined up.
No,
Grant Shapps was lined up.
Not true.
Right, we're going to take a quick break, though. Don't go with us. You guys are staying with us as well, aren't you? Right, Labour are pledging to fix 1 million potholes, but isn't this the job of your local council? Well, yes, and they would say they haven't had enough money from the Tories, but anyway, we'll get to the bottom of that. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Helen Worth, who of course plays Gail Platt in Coronation Street, is going to leave the soap after an epic 50 years. I'm joined now by another Corrie legend, Charlie Lawson, whose character, of course, Jim McDonald, lived across the cobbles from Gail Platt for many years. Welcome to the show, Charlie. I can see you looking at those images there, and has to be said, fantastic acting. In 50 years, many of us just grew up with these characters and basically think they're part of our family. Can you shed light on some of your happy memories of the talent of Helen Worth?
We saw each other every day. She was a consummate professional and still is. This initially surprised me, but then I thought about it, and I'm frankly not surprised. Having spoken to certain senior members of the cast over the last period of time, you know, when Helen joined, or even when I joined, there was a cast of 25. I would put another 75 on that now, perhaps. It's a different animal now, totally, you know, 4, 5, 6 episodes a week. When Helen started, it would have been 2. She lives in London. She's not getting any younger. And she's done 50 years, for God's sake. Nobody can ask any more of that. And listen, Helen, look at that wee smile. God bless you, darling. I hope you have a great retirement. The trouble with actors is that we very, very rarely hang our boots up unless the bank balance is full, which it very seldom is. but also we live for attention. And when you're in the most famous program on the planet, that attention 9 times out of 10 is an extremely good experience.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It is almost 9:50 now. With us in the studio still is Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and former Brexit Secretary, David Davis.
We were talking about Rishi earlier, and of course the D-Day is going to haunt him throughout the campaign because every time he does a TV news, he's asked about it. I was talking to a Labour MP, Labour canvasser the other day, it's an MPs now, who said it's not surfacing on the doorstep at all. In a whole weekend of campaigning, she didn't hear it mentioned once. What's your experience?
In the last week, once.
Right.
Yeah. And that was it. Most people, they've got other things they want to talk about.
Cost of living.
Cost of living, tax, the local school, whatever it might be. And of course, this is always the thing. Very often the things that seem to flash up in the media are not always what's going on the doorstep. Back in 2005, when I was Shadow Home Secretary, we thought we were really winning the argument on immigration. 85% of people cared. On the doorstep, it was schools, hospitals.
Yeah.
Money in my pocket. Money in my pocket. The sort of domestic family issues. Okay. And we're seeing the same here, really.
Is reform a big issue, though? And Farage, who's this extraordinary political figure,
he's a fantastic campaigner. But although his judgment on polling isn't always that good. 1 minute after the end of the Brexit vote when it was 2016, he and I had a conversation on the phone, and he said, "We've lost." And I said, "We haven't. We've won. I've just put a bet on it." Right. So he doesn't always call it right. Yeah. But the real risk of it, he makes a Labour government more likely because basically a vote outside of 3 seats, maybe a vote for reform is a vote effectively for Labour, and if Labour do win, then it's a vote to increase their majority. And I hate big majority parliaments. I've lived through a few. I've been a Public Accounts Committee chairman in one of them. And, holding government to account, the most important part of what Parliament does, it makes government better. It stops the government doing things like taxing too much, wasting money and so on. And if the majority is too big, that's a very dangerous thing. And that's also what he's playing to. And he's ignoring all the consequences of his strategy.
But the criticism will be but people will vote reform because the Tory government has not been Tory enough, David.
Which is I can see why. I can see why. I mean, these are people who naturally vote for me. But it's the outcome is perverse. The outcome is, it's basically the same as spoiling your ballot paper, really. The outcome is perverse. You end up getting more Labour or more Socialist. One of his lines is, of course, there's no difference between two parties. It's rubbish. Of course there's a difference. And my voters fear that. They fear it. So, I think, and just one other thing, other colleagues find the same thing. They talk to potential reform voters and find they're very like this. They're worrying about the consequence of actually creating a Labour majority.
How are you feeling as a Labour man at the moment, Kevin?
Well, I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I've actually voted 6 different parties or labels in all elections.
So tactically to get rid of the Tories.
I'm not a natural conservative. I think that's fair. That is fair to say. But Farage and Reform are a gift for Keir Starmer and Labour. Why do you rarely hear Labour figures attacking Farage and Reform? Because they almost want to encourage them tacitly, and they're going to do it publicly because they take most of their votes from David's party. And that fracture on the right will increase Labour's majority. That's unquestionably the case.
But don't you think there's a lot of Labour voters who like Nigel Farage? There's a lot of red wall people in this country.
No, there are people.
I think like,
no, not Labour voters. No, not Labour voters. There are people in the red wall, and some of them are working class. If you're suggesting Labour voters are more working class, who do like him, absolutely. But they're not Labour voters. Labour's going to do well in this election. Keir Starmer's expected to be the next Prime Minister, which is remarkable given that he inherited the fewest Labour seats since 1935. Scale of the victory is probably still, there's 3 weeks and a day to go, is up for grabs. But Farage will damage David's party, not Labour.
Right, David Davis.
That's right.
Kevin Maguire, thank you so much. We've got to take a quick break, but in a minute, an amazing footage of a burglary that gets...
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change, though, on the way. Behind me, the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night, it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere, generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start, though, for many central and eastern areas on Thursday. But here comes that change, clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lancashire, the A666 is closed each way along Whalley New Road in Blackburn after an accident. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after an oil spill yesterday evening. On the M1 in Leicestershire, the southbound exit at junction 23A for the A42 is partly blocked by an accident. There are long delays towards there. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed each way along Weddington Road off the A5 in Nuneaton after an accident. A car hit a tree in the early hours of this morning. On the M42 in Warwickshire, it's taking nearly half an hour southbound from junction 9 at Curdworth to 6 for the A45 near Coventry because of roadworks. In Northamptonshire, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound between junctions 4 and 5 near Rothwell, causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
10 a.m. on Wednesday the 12th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Final roll of the dice, is it, for the Prime Minister? Well, he promised us £17 billion in tax cuts and warned a vote for reform, i.e. Nigel Farage, will lead to a decade of Labour rule.
And how out of touch is he? In a TV interview to be broadcast later tonight, Rishi Sunak was asked what he had to live without whilst growing up, and this was his answer.
All sorts of things. There are like lots of people. There'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? But famously, Sky TV.
So, how could you manage without Sky TV? The plight of the potholes. Labour is turning to local issues, promising to fix 1 million of them every year if they come into power. How are they going to pay for it?
And in America, Joe Biden's son Hunter is found guilty on all 3 counts in his federal gun trial case. He now faces a possible 25-year prison sentence.
And in England, over 65s are to be offered health MOTs at the front doors of A&E departments to free up space and cut needless admissions.
So the A&E story, basically, if you're over 65 and you get to A&E, they're now going to check your blood pressure, ask you about your diet, take your weight, ask you, your pulse. But if you get to A&E, you generally will have a lot of that done.
Yeah.
You qualify for that, don't you?
Not yet, thank you.
How are you feeling? Have you had a fall recently, dear?
No, not yet.
And then they will give you kind of tips on how to exercise so you don't fall over. I'm guessing that if you're a doctor or a nurse in A&E, you've got better things to do.
Yeah, I mean, haven't they got enough on their plate already?
It's a really strange suggestion.
And it's going to lead to a queue of people going to A&E to get the MOT. who've got nothing wrong with them at all.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling very well. Can I have my MOT, please?
Yes. Would you do my blood pressure? Would you listen to my heart? And would you tell me how not to fall down the stairs?
I make a prediction. This won't happen.
I think you're probably right. gbnews.com/your say to get involved with the show this morning. First, the very latest news with Aaron.
Good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The UK economy failed to grow in April in a blow to Rishi Sunak's claim the country's turned a corner. Official figures show growth flatlined to 0%, down from 0.4% in March, which was in line with economists' expectations. Retail sales were down and construction output also contracted. It was partly because of the wet weather in April. The Lib Dems say the Tories have utterly failed to deliver on their promises, and Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says it's further evidence the Tories' economic plan isn't working.
It's this Prime Minister and this Chancellor that has presided over this state of affairs with an economy that's barely grown these last 14 years. Yesterday, the Prime Minister published a desperate wish list of giveaways, but frankly, the money is not there. And if the Prime Minister did have a chance to implement this, what would end up happening is that mortgages would go up by £4,800 for the average family. The country can't afford 5 more years of the Conservatives. Only Labour has a plan to grow our economy and tackle the cost of living crisis.
However, the Tories say today's figures show the economy actually grew by 0.7% in the 3 months to April, and Grant Shapps says people will feel the benefits.
There are £17 billion essentially of tax cuts, particularly to national insurance in there, but also assistance for people through things like Help to Buy. So you'll be able to buy a house with a 5% deposit, will permanently scrap stamp duty, and for pensioners will have triple lock plus. That means your pension under the Conservatives, your state pension will never be taxed, unlike under Starmer, who will tax your pension.
Labour says it will fix 1 million potholes every year if the party wins the next general election. They claim the damage caused by poorly maintained roads cost drivers on average £250 or almost £500 million last year. Labour says it will direct special funding to councils to fix the holes and has promised to bring down the cost of car insurance too. A Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Haigh accused the Conservatives of letting motorists down and promises Labour will turn the tide of neglect.
The state of our roads is a massive cost of living issue for drivers. We're all seeing our car insurance premiums driven up because of the cost of repairs. It's estimated that drivers had to shell out £500 million last year in pothole-related incidents, and with an average of £250 per driver.
The Liberal Democrats have outlined plans to end what they've described as a sewage scandal in England and Wales. They've promised to transform water firms into public benefit companies, ban bonuses for water bosses until leaks stop, and they would replace the regulator Ofwat with a tougher governing body. The party's leader, Sir Ed Davey, says their Clean Water Authority would be given new powers to reform the sector. A man's been charged with using threatening behaviour after objects were thrown at Nigel Farage. It's understood a coffee cup and other items from a building site narrowly missed the Reform UK leader, who was campaigning on an open-top bus in Barnsley. Police say 28-year-old Josh Greeley's been charged with using threatening, abusive, insulting words and behaviour with intent to cause fear or provoke unlawful violence. He's been released on bail and will appear in court later this month. Well, the Green Party is launching its manifesto later, promising to raise taxes for the wealthiest in society. The party would add a 1% tax on assets worth more than £10 million and an 8% national insurance on wages over £50,000. The party say proceeds would be used to fund improvements to health, housing, transport and the green economy. They've previously promised to spend £50 billion a year on health and social care by 2030. And get your fly swatters ready and your bug spray out too, because a new kind of mosquito has been discovered in 13 countries across the European Union. The Asian tiger mosquito is thought to be the most invasive of the species in the world. Now, health experts have linked the new insect to a rise of dengue fever in Europe. It's understood warmer conditions have allowed it to spread further across Europe in recent years, travelling alongside humans and also through the transportation of goods. So keep an eye out for that tiger mosquito. And you can keep an eye out for our latest news alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to the website for more details, gbnews.com. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning, it's 10:07. You've all been getting in touch at home. Thank you. Ian says, I really hate these sound bites. Rachel Reeves trying to get in all her buzzwords. Is she paid by the lie? Some of you saying, we've heard a lot from Rachel Reeves, but where is Jeremy Hunt? It's Hunt the Hunt, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah.
Where is he?
Well, he's still the Chancellor of the Exchequer, although they're no longer MPs. But he is fighting a rearguard battle in his Surrey constituency because his majority was once 28,000. It's now down to about 9,000. There have been boundary changes, so his nominal majority has been split in half. I think he will be, now Michael Gove has quit, potentially the what we call the Michael Portillo moment. In 1997, do you remember?
Yeah.
Where were you when Michael Portillo lost his seat? I was in the Times newsroom, and the Times was supporting the Tory party at the time, and the editor was rather shocked. When Portillo lost his seat, there was a roar came up from the newsroom floor because people were sick of the Tories. They'd been in power for 18 years, and just because you work for a Tory paper doesn't mean everybody there supports it. But and I think a lot of people cheered. So will Hunt be that moment? Or will it be Grant Shapps?
He's also desperately unpopular with the public. So
He is.
maybe there's a reason why they're not rolling him out.
Yeah, I don't think he's a great media performer either.
No.
You see who they've wheeled out today, Grant Shapps, who's not a bad media performer.
No, he's similarly a little robotic, isn't he? They sort of need some warm Tories out there, don't they? And David has got in touch to say Labour say they will fill 1 million potholes a year. Well, that means by 2039, all the potholes will be filled up. This flip-flop thinks people are stupid. I did think that. I thought 1 million.
Yeah.
Good luck. There's about 10 times that on my journey in. It's only about 7 miles.
And if you live in Sussex, where there are presumably a lot of potholes, one way they're going to pay for this, Labour say they're going to cancel this £328 million bypass, which has been planned for years. These things take years, far too long. It's going to be cancelled. So that's going to cause quite a lot of alarm and upset. It's a bypass around the historic town of Arundel, which is very beautiful,
nice.
with a lovely castle, of course.
Now, the Tories have launched their election manifesto with £17 billion worth of tax cuts promised by the Prime Minister, including abolishing national insurance for almost every self-employed worker.
Well, our political editor, Chris Hope, is with the Prime Minister on the Conservative Party battle bus. Chris, are they pleased with the reaction, the reception, or are they a little irritated that the clips of his interview with ITV are yet again overshadowing all they're trying to do because it's all, again, about D-Day?
That's right. And morning, Andrew. Morning, Bev. Yeah, I think the political cycle.
Now,
this train dashing through yeah, I think they will be perturbed maybe by those clips overnight from the ITV interview airing tonight, when the PM said that he didn't have Sky, and that's been interpreted on social media as him saying it was quite.
What we're experiencing here, this is the problem with the UK in a nutshell, right? No Wi-Fi on trains. If you want us to work from home and you want us to not use our cars, get some blooming good Wi-Fi on the trains.
And it's not just broadband, is it? I was trying to have a conversation. I was up in Yorkshire at the weekend with the election, and I was trying to have a conversation on the phone. I just gave up in it. Because it kept going into black holes in 2024.
How hard can it be? How hard can it be? If one of them put that in the manifesto yesterday, we are going to fix the Wi-Fi on every single train across the country, I'd probably vote for them.
Yeah.
Right, you might be wondering what's with the latest with the Liberal Democrats. Ed Davies in Warwickshire speaking about the party's plans for a clean water authority. But first, of course, he took a dip.
Of course
Let's have a look.
Yep. So you've either got to sit down on here or jump in and swim to the green stairs. And once you're over on the green stairs, you're more than welcome to go on. Now, I think I know who should go first, but
If you're listening on the radio, Ed Davey is in wetsuit. We're very typically getting used to seeing him in a wetsuit with a life vest on and a yellow helmet. And he's jumping into what looks like a man-made pond of some kind, perhaps. Is it an outdoor swimming pool? It's a little hard to make out, but there appears to be some sort of...
And who's the victim he's taking with him, who's half his size, who's about to go in the water?
I think there's an assault
the
course.
Candidate.
There we go. Water assault course. This is in Worcester. Oh, that won't be warm. He's just jumped in. The water's a very sort of nice greeny blue colour for if that's a fresh water pond.
He does front crawl. He swims. I'm a
quite a good
breaststroke
swimmer.
swimmer. Yeah. So there's now 4 of them in the water. They're making a splash.
That's what he's been doing. More Liberal Democrats.
But nobody's talking about his policy.
No. But we are talking about him because of the things he's doing, and he would say, well, that's maybe the point. Right. This video caught our eye because we criticise the police a lot, don't we, for not actually solving crimes. Well, 2 thieves tried to rob a West London optician's. Watch this. If you are listening on the radio, this is a optician's. This is on Chiswick High Road in West London. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. There are 2 men have broken in. They've got balaclavas on, hoods, and they're emptying one cabinet into a plastic bag, into an orange plastic bag. The alarms clearly are going off, and the traffic is moving on the outside, on the main road. And then suddenly, 1, 2, 3, 4 plainclothes police officers arrive with tasers.
Brilliant.
They get them on the ground straight away. How many police officers are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, possibly. Brilliant.
And that is proper policing. It's what you want. Community action, because high streets are being battered not just by internet competition, but by shoplifting and thieving, and that is brilliant. And I think we criticise the police. What we think we criticise is the way they're directed, the priorities they're given by their chief constables. But that is policing in action, and well done them.
Yeah.
And And still, who's going to pay for the blooming shop window to be repaired?
They didn't see them coming, though. They should have gone to Specsavers, didn't they? They picked the wrong opticians. Right, let's talk to former Detective Superintendent of Scotland Yard, Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, good morning. I wanted to show that footage because it's just so satisfying to see the bad guys get caught for a change. Do you think it was coincidental that there were so many undercover police passing at that moment?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Good morning to you both. That is most likely an intelligence-led operation. So the likelihood is there'd been either some sort of a tip-off beforehand or police had the intelligence that this was going to occur. Remember, this was at 4 o'clock in the morning. But what I would say, it was an absolutely fantastic job. It really gave me a warm feeling of what policing was like 2 decades ago. This kind of policing was actually the norm. And the reason why it was a norm was because the public used to give information on a regular basis because the relationship and confidence was so much better. But an absolutely fantastic result there. Let's hope that these two get banged up very quickly and for a long period of time, because I suspect they've probably been involved in other jobs that may not be likely to be proven.
And Shabnam, it's interesting you say intelligence. So somebody who knows these two creatures clearly tipped off the police?
Yeah, I mean, it may have been an operation that had been ongoing for some time because you don't get that many police officers, certainly not in plain clothes, rocking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Most police officers are out in uniform on patrols in their regular areas. This turn up was very, very quick. So as they would say in the elite flying squad, they were already on the plot, so to speak. So they would have been scattered around in particular locations waiting for them. This was something that was quite regular that I, as a police officer, was involved in when I worked on the crime squad back in the day. We'd get information, we'd get intelligence. We knew there was going to be a burglary coming off at either a premises. I remember a laundrette that was going to get broken into. We plotted up all over the place, and bingo, we got the guys, and we were able to apprehend them.
And how satisfying is that moment for the police officers involved, Shabnam?
It's one of the best feelings. Every police officer wants to catch the bad guys without a shadow of a doubt. But when you catch them, as they say, suspects on premises, the feeling that those officers would have had would have been absolutely amazing because they know that they're protecting the public. You know, the shop owners themselves said they've had a few problems previously and they're really glad. You know, it has cost them some money because, as you say, they've got to now probably increase their insurance because of damage caused, and some of those glasses would have been damaged. You know, these criminals aren't going to pay for them. But it's a great feeling for police officers, I think, generally, when they catch the bad guys.
Yeah, brilliant.
And Shabnam, I think it's almost a public service to have that sort of footage put out on the internet because it encourages people. It shows that the police are on the side of the good guys and trying to take down the bad guys. And we need to see more of those clips, I think, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm quite critical of policing when I think it's necessary. But actually, on the other hand, there are thousands of hardworking police officers who work behind the scenes, who go out and do this type of work on a day-to-day basis, convicting burglars, robbers. You know, some of those basic crimes like shoplifting is really difficult to resource and to police. But in general, the majority of police officers come to work every single day to do a good job, to protect the public and to bring offenders to justice.
Yeah, and it's so lovely to see. Shabnam Chowdhury, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It was actually the police had loaded that footage onto Facebook. That was how I
that's
saw
terrific.
it.
And they should do it more often because it will encourage people who often think the police aren't on our side. They are.
It's great to celebrate the police for once, isn't it?
It is.
Right, up next, there is a huge scandal brewing. England fans are to be served weak shandy in Germany in the first Euro match against Serbia. How outrageous.
Do they drink shandy?
They do now. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the business task force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day. This is GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
What
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
(10:20). You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Now, throughout the election, we'll be hearing from people across the country about what matters to them. Who is it this week?
I'm David Lee, I'm 45 from Mansfield. The biggest issue for me is basically putting money back into people's pockets. Shops are closing, people are out of jobs, and the regeneration of a place like this is really needed. I'm a business owner, I've got a small shoe repair shop. I've got to put my prices up because my costs everywhere have gone up. So to put money back into people's pockets, lower taxes, and get more shops open. That's what I want to see in a place like this. I think people around here feel disillusioned with politics, with government. They talk about all this money that this town's being given to level up, and our money is going to be given to the places in the north to level up. But what levelling up has happened in Mansfield? This marketplace, it used to be full of stalls. Now, as you look at it, there's an handful of stalls. Mansfield has always been Labour. You put a red ribbon on a donkey round here and it would have got in. But then we come to 2017 and it switched allegiances and it went Conservative. And I think a big reason for that was obviously Brexit. In the past, I voted for Labour, for Conservative, even for UKIP. But at the moment, I'm on the fence of which way I'm going to vote. And I'm not going to look at Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer on which one of those I'm going to vote for, or even the other parties. I'm going to look at what the politicians say they're going to do for my town, Mansfield.
Right. Stephen Pound and Mike Parry are with us in the studio this morning. Morning, gentlemen. Do we want to start
Does she mean us?
Do we want to start with Shandy? Do you want to start with some weak beer, Stephen Pound?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, call me old-fashioned, but we've got a nasty game coming up against Serbia. And what
this is the Euros football.
In the Euros. So the England team, when they're not...
Is it nasty because the Serbian fans are not very pleasant?
Well, not very pleasant. I mean, they basically... There's two gangs of ultras there.
Right.
The Red Star and the Partisan ones.
Right.
And they actually beat somebody to death, in the change room, that place. Look, the point being, do you think the Serbian fans are going to dilute their slivovitz and their vodka, whereas we are going to be drinking, instead of the normal German beer, and fair play to the Germans, they do make a decent beer.
Yeah.
And instead of the 4.5 that you normally expect, this is going to be 50% lemonade. Well, I'm sorry. Do you imagine Bobby Moore being served a pint of lemonade?
They'll get over it in some way. I did the World Cup in Germany in 2006,
You covered it?
I covered it and travelled all over the country. Our first game on Sunday is at Gelsenkirchen, OK? It's a beautiful football ground, but it looks like a supermarket, OK? It's very... it's where, in fact, Jose Mourinho won his first Champions League with Porto, so...
You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's his fame. But I travelled with the fans all over the country, and generally speaking, in my view, since the bad old days, England fans are very well behaved when we travel abroad. Our reputation is not what it was in the 80s when, there was terrible violence everywhere we went. And so this, once again, as Steve's already pointed out, is punishing the wrong people. It's punishing the wrong people. The Germans are saying, well, keep our eye on the English to try and defend them from the Serbians. Well, why don't you keep your eye on the Serbians and try and dilute the amount of booze they're going to drink, because our boys are going to be OK. We are well behaved abroad now, and a lot of that is to do with the fact that the government and the FA work together to make sure they know where our fans are, acceptable levels of behaviour, and that they get the message if you get banned.
And if there is bad behaviour, often it's an isolated, they get the individual and they're banned from football.
They're banned from travelling again. They can have their passport taken away, and that's been very, very effective. The German police are pretty effective, but as Steve's already pointed out, the old Serbian mob are unusually aggressive in their support of their country.
Right. That's putting it mildly, but the problem is most of the problems actually relate to the way they control it within the stadium. I mean, I used to go to a lot of away matches, and I had my Fulham shirt with "These colours don't run" written on the back of it. But we actually had a good time. We had a laugh. We never actually attacked anybody. But these people, Partisan and the other team, Red Star, they actually have a shocking reputation. So what we need is crowd control, separation, some proper policing on the day, and not actually getting this nonsense about making the British fans drink lemonade.
And it's true. And also, you'll find there'll be more England fans there, many, many more.
There's going to be 40,000 in Germany.
Exactly. Yeah. But Stephen is also right in saying that in every state we have a dividing line, OK? And that dividing line separates two sets of fans. What they have to stop are the missiles going from one side to the other. And that can be done properly with netting and all that kind of stuff, but also by making sure that the people go into the stadium without missiles.
And flares.
And flares. I mean,
it's interesting, Mike. Beverly, you like rugby. When you go to an international rugby match, there's no separation of the crowd. They actually have, England and Ireland actually amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Why? Is it just because they're all toffs? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a cultural,
tribal,
and is it this
male thing. Right. Should we talk about yesterday's Tory manifesto announcement and the reaction to it? Mike Parry, did Rishi Sunak go far enough in terms of changing the dial for votes?
Well, what I think represents exactly what Labour are going to do is this headline in The Guardian, right? Because it says, Tories' implausible £17 billion tax giveaway condemned. That's the voice of The Guardian. The Guardian is the voice of the incoming Labour government. So what they're saying is, you won't get any tax cuts from us because they're implausible and they don't work. Well, hang on, you've got to have the ambition to make tax cuts if they do work. And this is that. I mean, Keir Starmer saying, I'm a socialist. Keir Starmer saying, I won't use the NHS. And now this is a banner, really, for Labour. There won't be any tax cuts. That's the way I've read it.
Well, hang on a second, Mike. I mean, I thought that was an absolute car crash at Silverstone, because when he made this promise, what he then say, where's the money going to come from? He said it's going to come from two places. It's going to be cutting down on tax avoidance. What?
Well, that's what your lot keep saying.
And it's...
They do,
No, we don't. We do not.
Yes, you do. She said it this morning.
That is only one aspect of the package.
But
hang on a second. The other one was, it's going to save on the benefits. So it's going to cut your sickness benefit, cut your unemployment benefit, and it's actually going to give to even the richer people. I'm sorry, you know, this idea of raising the
bill since COVID has gone up £70 billion. Why? Because there are people staying at home who should be back at work, and that's where they should be.
But let's make the system work. But you cannot predicate an entire economy on taking money away from the weak and the vulnerable.
They're not weak and vulnerable.
I'm sorry, many of them are. When you actually meet them face to face, you can talk about a group of people and call them shirkers or slackers, whatever. But when you actually meet people face to face, as I did for years in my surgery, many of those cases are heartbreaking.
Stephen, sickness benefits are going up from 69 billion to 90 billion during the course of the next government. I do not believe people are getting routinely sick at such a huge rate. It can't be right.
But you can imagine, you cannot imagine if this is you can't go into the bank and say, you know, I want to borrow a huge amount of money and I'm going to save it by taking, you know, Granny's pension. It's bonkers. I'm sorry, this is like, I think when Keir Starmer said it was like Jeremy Corbyn's one. Do you remember everybody's going to get free broadband on their allotment shed and all that nonsense?
What nerve he had to say that. The Labour leader has said this is Jeremy Corbyn.
It was promising the world.
He was in his shadow cabinet for 3 years, man.
He kind of drafted up the Jeremy
Prime Minister in 2017 and Prime Minister in 2019. A rotten old Marxist he campaigned for, and he's had time to stick it on the Tories.
God loves a sinner who repents.
What? Well, that's right. But he kind of drafted the Jeremy Corbyn charge.
No, he didn't.
And when he ran for the leadership, he ran on Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto. 10 policies, all of which he's ditched. I think he secretly believes all of them. He's the most left-wing leader Labour have had.
I believe that as well.
Andrew, can I say...
He won't use private medicine to save his own family.
Clearly, you've not spent as much time with him as I have. Believe you me, he's a social democrat.
I don't believe that for a minute. I honestly don't believe that for a minute. You look back at his history, look back at the start of his career as a lawyer, when he says, oh, I've prosecuted thousands of people, he was a human rights lawyer, helping people to stay in this country. And I'm not saying that maybe they shouldn't have had help, but it does indicate to you where he thinks his priorities are.
Well, I'm sorry, I worked with him in Northern Ireland. He was chief prosecutor in Northern Ireland, and I have to say I have immense respect for the man. The hardest job in the world. Imagine being a prosecutor in Northern Ireland, and he did it brilliantly. And as far as I'm concerned, I respect him for that.
Right.
Well, should we be worried, though, about they're going to take more of our income? Should we be worried about the fact that Labour will just fill the tax coffers?
Oh, come on. Look, this 2,094 business, basically, it's over 4 years, so that's, what, £500 a year, which is like £50 a month. It is like 41...
That's quite a lot for some families.
Yeah, well, I agree, but the point, it is not to £20,000. It is not. And it's just because...
And what about the rises in capital gains that are coming? The Guardian said 10 to 12 rises around capital gains. She's going to announce them in September, October, November. The Guardian...
Andrew, that is the Guardian's wish list. God forbid the day we ever come when we actually listen to the Guardian. I'm sorry.
But capital gains is so pernicious because capital gains is a tax on what you've saved to try and make your future better. You put it into a house and then you sell the house and, we'll tax you again.
Talking about potentially having capital gains on your first property, on your sole property.
On your own livable property. I totally agree.
And not tinnitus yet, Stephen. You're a first-time buyer, you sell your property the first time, and there's talk that Labour are going to put capital gains tax on the profit you make on your first property. It's not been denied.
Well, of course they're not. I'm sorry, that's nonsense. Nobody is saying that.
We'll see.
Nobody is saying that.
Right, a lot of more stories to get through with you this morning.
We've got Jude Bellingham's underwear to come.
We haven't even got round to Jude Bellingham in his underpants.
That's some contract, that, because, of course,
Andrew,
the previous...
don't pull that face. That's not the face you were pulling when we were looking at it just before.
No, the previous model, of course, was David Beckham. So he's filling big pants.
At least he's not covered in tattoos. At least he's not covered in tattoos.
And David Beckham is desperate to get his knighthood. Did you see that the other day?
Yes, I know. Rod Stewart's back in it.
Talking of handsome men, Aaron Armstrong is here with your news.
I think there's tax issues.
Very good morning to you. 10:31 here in the GB Newsroom. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The UK economy flatlined in April in a blow to Rishi Sunak's claim the Conservatives' plan is working. Official figures show growth fell to 0%, down from 0.4% in March. Retail sales were down and construction output also contracted, partly because of the wet weather in April. The Lib Dems say the Tories have utterly failed to deliver on their promises. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says it exposes the damage done after 14 years of Conservative chaos.
It's this Prime Minister and this Chancellor that has presided over this state of affairs with an economy that's barely grown these last 14 years. Yesterday, the Prime Minister published a desperate wish list of giveaways, but frankly, the money is not there. And if the Prime Minister did have a chance to implement this, what would end up happening is that mortgages would go up by £4,800 for the average family. the country can't afford 5 more years of the Conservatives. Only Labour has a plan to grow our economy and tackle the cost of living crisis.
However, the Tories say today's figures show the economy actually grew by 0.7% in the 3 months to April. And Grant Shapps, Defence Secretary, says people will feel the benefits laid out in their manifesto.
There are £17 billion essentially of tax cuts, particularly to national insurance in there, but also assistance for people through things like Help to Buy. So you'll be able to buy a house with a 5% deposit, will permanently scrap stamp duty. And for pensioners, we'll have triple lock plus. That means your pension under the Conservatives, your state pension will never be taxed, unlike under Starmer, who will tax your pension.
And 2 men accused of criminally damaging the famous Sycamore Gap tree will appear in court later. Daniel Graham, who's 38, and 31-year-old Adam Crothers are accused of causing £622,000 worth of damage to the much photographed tree. It stood in a dramatic dip on Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland for more than 200 years until it was cut down last year, sparking a national outcry. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. The QR code's on your screen. The details are also on our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Quick look at the markets for you this morning. The pound buys you $1.2756 and 1.1870 euros. The price of gold, £1,815, 26 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,213 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come this morning, a really strange story. The NHS in England are going to be offering health MOTs to pensioners who arrive at A&E. I'm going to be taking Andrew in for his checkup straight after the show. This is Britain's Newsroom.
So cruel, so cruel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lancashire, the A666 is closed in both directions along Worley New Road in Blackburn after an accident. On Merseyside, Balliol Road East is closed eastbound from the A565 Derby Road junction to Breeze Hill in Bootle after an oil spill yesterday evening. In Warwickshire, the A444 is closed in both directions off the A5 along Wellington Road in Nuneaton after an accident in the early hours of this morning when a car crashed into a tree. And on the M42 in Warwickshire, there are southbound delays because of roadworks. It's taking around a quarter of an hour to get from junction 8 for the M6 down to junction 6 for the A45 near Coventry. So that's still looking very busy, but easing. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
His highly rated book details the moving story of how he found his birth mother. I'm pleased to say, of course, I'm joined by the legend that is Andrew Pearce.
Hello. Lovely to be back on your show.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, that was the first time I got you on my show.
I think the first time I ever worked on GB News was on your show.
I couldn't believe it because I used to listen to you all the time on LBC.
Right.
But you found time to write a memoir.
I actually started writing it during lockdown. It was almost just putting thoughts on a piece of paper. I loved my adoptive mum, who adopted me. Wonderful woman. She gave me a wonderful life with my dad in Swindon. I was adopted into a home with 3 kids. They were there already. They never resented me. So I never, ever wanted to do anything that would upset my mum. So what I did, I found Margaret and didn't tell mum what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because she had me in the early 1960s. In fact, she was 34.
Wow.
Just a few weeks from her 35th birthday. An Irish Roman Catholic nurse. She had me in Bristol. She lived in Birmingham. She'd gone to extraordinary lengths to cover her tracks. And I was in the orphanage for the best part of 3 years. And she used to visit me regularly because she thought at some point she'd be able to give me a home. But I'm not sure how that was ever plausible because it's the early 1960s and single mothers were the devil incarnate. They really were social pariahs. So it was going to be very difficult for her.
You probably wondered who she is.
Yeah.
And who your father is as well.
Yeah. She visited me regularly till I was 2 years old. It must have been incredibly painful for her to give me up. Well, I discovered during my research in the book that actually when Margaret decided to give me up for adoption, she then wrote to the nuns to say she was going on a holiday and that she'd be at a different address. In fact, she was going on a honeymoon. She'd met someone while I was in the orphanage.
The People's Channel.
Well, we just want to hear what you've got to say so you know where to send your views.
GBNews.com/yours. So we just got a nice hot cup of tea in that break and a couple of digestive biscuits.
Well,
I know you like to join us in our biscuit. You did. You know you didn't. I'm sorry about that.
It's like politics, isn't it? Do as I say, not as I do.
You could have had a hot cup of tea. I would have made you one if it was. And we hide. Don't tell everyone, but we hide our biscuits on the set.
Because the producers eat them all.
We hide them on the bookcase. Marianne said, well said, Andrew. Starmer has no moral compass. He contradicts himself all the time. He supported Corbyn and now he condemns him, reversing the law on the prosecution of Northern Ireland soldiers. The list of his empty U-turn commitments is endless. How can anyone in their right mind trust this man? And Debbie says, why is the NHS just doing MOTs for pensioners? Working age could do with that too. We pay the taxes and claim the sickness benefits that they want to cut. We're going to talk to a GP about this in just a moment, actually. Dave says, roll on July the 4th. I'm sick to the back teeth of hearing the rubbish being spouted by both major parties every time they're in front of a camera. It's time they got real. And Neil was talking about Stephen Pound and what Stephen was saying. He says, wake up, Mr Pound. Your party are telling lies on tax. Any party who say they're not going to increase the basic taxes we pay is just a complete lie. They will go after all other taxes, inheritance tax, pensions, business tax, tax on banks, oil and gas, and then increase stamp duty on houses. It all lies from Reeves and Captain Snoozefest.
And of course, they've already said, the Tories say they'll cut national insurance again, be worth another 450 quid a year. But Labour said they wouldn't do it because we can't afford it. But then they say, well, we don't know what's in the books. They can't have it both ways.
No, absolutely. Well, Treve has said Labour are planning to apply capital gains tax liability on the home that you live in when you sell it. In effect, you'll have to compulsory downsize every time you move under Labour. Such a good point.
They're going to be challenged about because the Labour manifesto launches tomorrow, and I think there'll be a paucity of information about tax.
Yeah.
So they will be challenged. Most of the questions I suspect to Starmer will be about tax, and they should be, because that affects us most.
And the property market is so critical to everything, to the main macroeconomy movement. It's also just critical on a very basic level to how people feel about safety and the security of where they live.
If you buy a house, often you then buy a new bathroom or a new kitchen. That's good for small builders. It's hugely important.
Social mobility, you want the young people to be able to get on the housing ladder. All of that ties in with property. Right. American President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, has been convicted of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun.
The jury found the 54-year-old guilty in all 3 counts against him. He could face up to 25 years in jail. It makes him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. Extraordinary, isn't it? We've got the President of the United States convicted of a criminal offence, and now the son of the serving president is a criminal.
Absolutely. Well, joining us now is US political analyst Eric Ham. Good morning, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, what this tells me is that the top of American politics is riddled with criminality and corruption that normally has stayed behind the scenes. And to be honest, I'm quite glad that we're seeing some of it in public.
Well, yes, we do see here in the United States the justice system is, in fact, working. However, we have to recognize that Hunter Biden is not a politician. Although he is the son of a politician, he is not involved in this election. He has not served in government, and he has not been involved in actually any public grift. What we are seeing, however, is this is a system where there has been accusations of weaponization of the justice system and things like that. But clearly what we're seeing is this is a system that's actually working.
He could face a prison sentence, but if I'm right, Eric, later in the year he faces more potential charges over tax evasion, which could be much more embarrassing for the president.
Well, it could be even more damaging for Hunter Biden, because while he was convicted of this gun charge, because it will go down as a first offense, he's likely to not see a lot of jail time, if any jail time. However, when he goes to trial on this criminal tax evasion charge, if actually convicted, he could serve 17 years in prison.
Wow.
And he will actually be, and because he will be a convicted felon already, that will certainly weigh into his sentence in that particular trial. So this is by no means over for the president's son. And of course, we know how this could be personally impactful for the president, particularly as he looks ahead to re-election.
Because the president has a very close relationship with Hunter, does he not? And he speaks to him, I read 2 or 3 times a day, and he's not exercising the right to use a presidential pardon, which, of course, potentially he could.
He could either pardon him, he could commute his sentence, but he has said that he would not do either of those things. And so what we're seeing here is this could be potentially damaging for Hunter Biden, looking at jail time in both of these criminal trials, to say nothing of what the legal cost that he's certainly racking up here. And also, it's something that will weigh heavily on the president, not only as he looks to re-election, but also as he looks to try to wrap himself around these key issues where we see the president is heavily engaged in terms of the conflict in Gaza and, of course, the ongoing war in Europe.
Eric, just tell our British audience, because they may not be familiar with the Hunter Biden laptop story. So several years ago, when Hunter Biden was very much a drug addict, he took a laptop to a repair shop and he left it there. Now, there has been all sorts of incriminating information on this laptop, hasn't there? And he's avoided any sort of prosecutions, despite the fact that the images on that laptop are shocking.
Well, yes, we know about his drug use. We know about his relationships with his deceased brother's widow. We also know about the ongoing scandal with one of the mother of his children, a former stripper, and dealing with refusing to pay child support. So Hunter Biden has had a very salacious life and lifestyle. It's something that has been a bit of a problem politically for the president and his family. But because of these struggles, what we are at least seeing publicly is the president and the president's family continue to wrap their arms around Hunter Biden because, in fact, of his struggles with addiction.
If Hunter Biden is then convicted of these tax charges too and then gets a very long prison sentence, Eric, is that going to make it more difficult for the Democrats to attack Donald Trump with his own criminal conviction?
Well, no, because Hunter Biden is not running for office. However, Donald Trump is. And we know that where this also, I think, diverges is Donald Trump, as we see in the most recent case where he was found guilty, he was guilty of attempting to try to influence an election by paying off a porn star to keep her quiet. And we know, of course, the other charges also deal directly with election integrity. Hunter Biden has no such issues. And of course, we know, based on what we're seeing, neither does his father.
The issue, of course, that might be looming for Biden will be the business dealings of Hunter Biden, particularly in Ukraine, and that damning line about 10% for the big guy. But that is a conversation for another time, Eric. We haven't got time to go into it. But thank you so much for your analysis this morning, US political analyst Eric Ham.
You sort of feel it could only be in America, this.
It's extraordinary.
President has a criminal conviction, the president's son has one, probably going to get a second one later in the year, and could end up in prison for 20 years.
See, I honestly think, my theory being that Biden is quite happy to have Hunter, he's not happy, but Hunter out of the way, in prison, given what he could be charged with and given the way that his father might be dragged into some of those allegations.
I still think
maybe just putting him away on this quietly.
I don't think that will go away. The Republicans will make sure it doesn't go away.
Well, and so they should. Now, the NHS will begin offering health MOTs to older and frailer patients. That's you, Andrew, it says in the script. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So unkind.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, 1 or 2 over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change, though, on the way. Behind me, the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night, it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere, generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start, though, for many central and eastern areas on Thursday. But here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So older and frail patients, this is not about me, will be given health MOTs, apparently, at the entrance of A&E departments in hospitals to avoid unnecessary admissions.
So the NHS says this could be a lifeline for many patients, allowing them to be assessed more quickly. Doesn't make much sense to us, though, does it?
Well, the pharmacist Oren Govind, who's a friend of this programme, joins us now. I don't quite understand how this is going to work, Thorin. Morning to you. I mean, does it just not mean that hospitals are going to just get a queue of people saying, I'm on my way to A&E, there's something wrong with me, because they think they might get a free MOT?
I think it's a question that I am also asking, because to me it's all about prevention. I don't want people to be going to A&E if they don't need to. I think there are some really key points in this, in that they're targeting over 65s and those who are frail. And we know that if people of those in those categories end up in hospital, they can have more issues. So, you know, if you end up in a hospital bed, you've deconditioned, so your body gets used to not getting out and about each day, not being out of bed as much. There's lots of issues that come with a hospital stay. So it's great that we're going to try and keep them out of A&E. But to me, it should be earlier than that. We should be having this information much earlier than someone going to a hospital.
But Thorin, this A&E, this assessment at A&E that we're talking about is some pretty basic measurements: your height, your weight, your blood pressure, and a conversation with a patient. Is that really good? If you've gone to A&E because there's something seriously wrong with you, which is what most people use A&E for still, isn't that all done on a very basic level anyway?
It should be being done, absolutely, as part of getting the whole picture of an individual's health. So I'm interested to know how they are going to staff this, to be honest, because we know that A&Es are busy enough. The Royal College for Emergency Medicine actually said that last year, I've got index, I thought it was quite important, more than 250 patients a week in England may have died unnecessarily last year due to very long waits for a bed in A&E. So it's all very well having MOTs, but we need it to help people stay well much earlier. And not just that, though, unfortunately, people do go to A&E unnecessarily. So I've had patients, for example, who go, I've run out of medication, so I went to A&E, where they absolutely can't do anything for you there. You need to come to the pharmacist. So it's all about getting people to the right place in the health service, which I don't think we're that good at the moment.
And talking of the right place, does this mean NHS staff are going to have to be permanently positioned in the entrance of our major hospitals to intercept someone and say, how old are you, where are you going, and to do these health MOTs, and how long will they take?
Well, absolutely. And they're saying they're going to be staffing these for 10 hours each day. That's a lot of resource. And I'm questioning why people are already not having these, not knowing these measurements already in the community. So I know we offer an ambulatory blood pressure check for some patients. So they take home something they wear, which measures their blood pressure over the course of hours. Because we know if you just rock up to a health service, sometimes that can increase your blood pressure and what they call white coat syndrome. So your blood pressure goes up because you're a bit stressed. So I'm very keen to see how this plays out, but I hope it's actually going to have some tangible benefits and actually think long term rather than just, you know, a bit of a tick box exercise at A&E front door.
OK, all right, thank you so much, pharmacist Thorand Govind, helping us to understand that in a little bit more
Well, I think she shares our scepticism.
Yeah, it's a really strange policy. I don't...
And it's sort of come from nowhere. It's not in a manifesto. It's come out of NHS England.
And said, right, come on, we're going to come up with something. We've got to come up with something. Let's just do this. People are there... Anyway. Keep your messages coming this morning. And
still to come, you'll be really excited about this. The Green Party are about to launch their general election manifesto. I hope it's not on a piece of paper.
It might be.
Because they won't want to waste any paper, surely.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Here's the weather with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire, down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start though for many central and eastern areas on Thursday, but here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly. Rain for Northern Ireland through the morning. That rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true.
You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Wednesday, the 12th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So it's manifesto launch day for the Green Party. They're going to be making their pitch to the nation in Hove. We'll bring you that live.
That's why Bev's wearing a green dress.
It's coincidental.
Out of touch. In a TV interview to be broadcast later, the Prime Minister was asked what he had to go without when he was growing up. This is what he said.
All sorts of things. Like lots of people, there'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? But famously, Sky TV. So.
Now, while campaigning in Humberside, Keir Starmer pledged to tackle potholes and promised that Labour won't raise income tax, national insurance or VAT. Have a listen.
All of our plans are fully costed, fully funded. There will be no increase in income tax, in national insurance or VAT.
And in America, Joe Biden's son Hunter found guilty on all 3 counts in his federal gun trial case. He faces a possible 25-year prison sentence. It looks like America has a criminal running for president, while the current president has a criminal son.
How excited are you about the Green Manifesto?
Can't wait. I was just struggling to remember the name of the leader of the Green Party, because they divvy it up, don't they? They have 2. There'll be a joint leader.
Oh, who's the other one?
Can't remember.
Don't know. Good point. Oh,
Caroline Lucas, and they're doing
Caroline Lucas famously was for years.
Yeah, she was, yeah, but she stood down at the last election. And we will talk about tax later, and it's all right for Keir Starmer to say they're not going to raise income tax. They too are going to freeze income tax thresholds, which means more people will pay more tax. It's dishonest. They should tell the truth.
Stay tuned for that Green Party manifesto, because I do think that what they do very
Green
well
dress.
is that, believe me, this is entirely coincidental.
I'm not wearing green, notice.
They appeal to the younger votes, the Greens. That's where they will steal the votes from, is the younger people. So let's see what they've got on offer.
And they'll take them off the Labour left and pinch votes.
Completely. First, though, the very latest news, Darren Armstrong.
Hi there, it is 2 minutes past 11. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The UK economy failed to grow in April in a blow to Rishi Sunak's claim the country's turned a corner. Official figures show growth flatlined to 0%, down from 0.4% in March, which was in line with economists' expectations. Retail sales were down and construction output also contracted, partly because of the wet weather in April. The Lib Dems say the Tories have utterly failed to deliver on their promises, and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says it's further evidence their economic plan isn't working.
The one thing that everybody expected and needed from Rishi Sunak was stability after the disaster of Liz Truss. What he's now done is become the latest version of Liz Truss with unfunded commitments. And I think the public know, voters know, that there's a cost to that and they want an alternative. And that's why I'm really pleased that tomorrow, a different approach. We will set out the case for growth, for rebuilding, for putting our nation first to go forward.
Well, the Tories say today's figures show the economy actually grew by 0.7% in the 3 months to April. And Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says people will feel the benefits from their manifesto pledges.
There are £17 billion essentially of tax cuts, particularly to national insurance in there, but also assistance for people through things like Help to Buy. So you'll be able to buy a house with a 5% deposit, will permanently scrap stamp duty, and for pensioners will have triple lock plus. That means your pension under the Conservatives, your state pension, will never be taxed, unlike under Starmer, who will tax your pension.
The Liberal Democrats have outlined plans to end what they describe as a sewage scandal in England and Wales. They've promised to transform water firms into public benefit companies, ban bonuses for water bosses until discharges and leaks stop, and they would replace the regulator Ofwat with a tougher governing body. The party's leader, Sir Ed Davies, says their Clean Water Authority would be given new powers to reform the sector. A man's been charged with using threatening behaviour after objects were thrown at Nigel Farage. It's understood a coffee cup and other items from a building site narrowly missed the Reform UK leader, who was campaigning on an open-top bus in Barnsley. Police say 28-year-old Josh Greeley was charged with using threatening, abusive, insulting words and behaviour with intent to cause fear or provoke unlawful violence. He's been released on bail and will appear in court later this month. Brendan Cox, husband of the murdered Labour MP Joe Cox, says violence is not the answer to solve political debate.
I think it's deeply depressing that people think that you can resolve political disagreements with intimidation, with violence. And, you know, some people think these things are a joke, the throwing of the milkshakes, the throwing of eggs, the throwing of paper cups. But these things aren't, because what they do is that they create a poisonous culture in our democracy. They make people who are willing to go further than that, not just throw things, perhaps throw a punch, perhaps worse than that, more likely to do that. So you can disagree vehemently with people like Farage, which I certainly do, but we have a responsibility to uphold the right of candidates, no matter their views.
Well, the Green Party is launching its election manifesto. Anytime now, it's promising to raise taxes for the wealthiest in society. The party would add a 1% levy on assets worth more than £10 million, and 8% national insurance on wages over £50,000 a year. The party say proceeds would be used to fund improvements to health, housing, transport and the green economy. They've previously promised to spend £50 billion a year on health and social care by 2030. Two men have denied chopping down the Sycamore Gap tree last year. Daniel Graham, who's 38, and 31-year-old Adam Carruthers are accused of causing more than £600,000 worth of damage to the famous landmark, and also of damaging Hadrian's Wall. It stood in a dramatic dip in Northumberland for more than 2 centuries. until it was felled in September, sparking a national outcry, and the pair attended court wearing balaclavas over their heads. And you should perhaps get your fly swatters ready, get your bug spray out, because a new type of mosquito has been discovered in some 13 countries across the EU. The Asian tiger mosquito is thought to be the most invasive of its species in the world. Health experts have linked the new insect to the rise of dengue fever in Europe, and it's thought warmer conditions have allowed it to spread across much of Europe in recent years, travelling alongside humans and also through the transportation of goods. Well, you can get the latest by scanning the QR code for GB News Alerts. Our website also has the details. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
.07 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We will be having the Green Party manifesto launch. I know you've been waiting with bated breath. Bev's even wearing a green frock to be there in sympathy with them, or empathy with them, or spirit, whatever you call it. But we've got in the studio with us, we're delighted to say, Republican Overseas Jennifer Ewing. Big moment for yesterday in America with the president's son criminal conviction.
Absolutely. So just to remind your audience, Hunter Biden, the president's son, was convicted on 3 charges with regards to guns and lying on some forms, basically saying that he was not a drug addict when, in fact, the jury found that he was. So he's convicted of those 3 felonies. The sentencing will not be for a few months, so we won't know what the sentence is. It could be jail time. I doubt very much that it will be, because it's his hometown, Wilmington, Delaware. They like the Bidens there. The most important 2 things I think that have come out of this is, number 1, we now know that the laptop from hell is real. And in the lead up to the 2020 presidential election, as you'll recall, it was supposed to be Russian disinformation. It was, not real. It's real. We now know that. So this
is his laptop that he left.
This is his laptop.
It's pretty explosive material.
Yep, and if you recall, the New York Post, America's oldest newspaper, was basically censored, thanks to a lot of the, the old Twitter, and everyone was censoring that. So that's election interference for sure. Number 2, this allows the Democrats to say, see, we have a fair justice system. We'll go after Democrats as well, which is fine, except for these gun charges are the only charges that were facing Hunter that do not tie him back to his father, the President Joe Biden. I mean, if you really wanted to go after Hunter, it would have been on more about the influence peddling, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's China. We now know that there were 20 different bank accounts that Biden family members had sending money to that. So the foreign agent, the FARA, as we call it, that probably is what should have been investigated. But again, that'll tie it to the president. So this is a safe way.
That's right.
To
and that's kind of what I was saying this morning, and the fact that Biden's statement is saying, I will accept this. Page the papers. What does he say? Hunter Biden guilty of buying gun illegally, and the president saying, I will stand by this. And I thought, I bet you will, because this is a safe way
exactly.
of putting him behind bars, getting him out of the picture. And as you say, it's one of the few accusations that does not lead back potentially to the president of America.
That's exactly right. And you'd think that the Republicans would jump on this and go, yay, we got somebody. But it's interesting. A lot of Republicans have come out and said, look, I have no doubt this Hunter deserves to be in jail for something, but this isn't it. And actually, they don't like it because of the possible infringement on Second Amendment rights, saying, because he was an addict, does that mean he can no longer own a gun? So a lot of the pro-gun people are almost in defense of this. But
what of the president himself? This is a personal blow for him, because he's very close to his son. Bev and I were looking at some footage of him yesterday. He was in a lineup where people were dancing, and he barely knew where he was. It was embarrassing to watch. His degenerative powers are clearly fading. Sorry, his powers are degenerating quicker and quicker. But if you listen on the radio, we're showing this clip again. He's staring vacantly into space while people are dancing alongside him, including the vice president. It's shocking to watch.
It's shocking to watch.
He's not got a grip anymore.
That's true, and that's been the case for quite some time. And this is sad. You know, it's actually, it's very sad. It almost, I told your colleague last night, it almost looks photoshopped because he's so still. And then you've got the man dancing in the sequin dress, and you've got, you know, George Floyd's brother there. And, you know, they're trying to basically do their identity politics around Juneteenth event. Yeah, that's George Floyd's brother. So, yeah, but this poor guy, and I have said for months and months and months, I do not see how he can make it to November. I don't see how he can. You ask any Washington insider and they say, nope, this is our guy. You know, we're going forward.
What happens, though?
Sure.
Because my suspicion is that they will keep him in there for as long as possible. At the last minute, they will use his health as an excuse to pull him. And then what happens, Jen?
Do we then get that terrible vice president?
Well, actually, Andrew, that is one option. So there's basically 3 ways that they could do it. One, it would be he just drops out now for health reasons and Kamala Harris becomes our president. They are going to do anything to avoid that because
She's not up to it.
Well,
she's not popular.
She's less popular than he is, and he's the most unpopular president, including Jimmy Carter, in the history. So I think it's like 37% or something. That's one option, not going to happen. Number 2, they go to the Democratic National Convention in August, and the delegates that were sent there that pledged to vote for Biden, they actually can fast and furiously change their mind and vote for somebody else. That is a possibility, right? Be very dramatic. And the third one is he gets the nomination at the DNC in Chicago in August, and then afterwards they realize, okay, he cannot do this, and the Democratic Party decides on someone else.
Who would it be?
That's a great question. You know, we've heard everything from the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, perhaps teaming up with the governor of my home state, Gavin Newsom.
We've got to wrap up there,
Sure.
Jenny. Sorry.
We've got to go to the Green
Jennifer
Party.
Ewing there.
Manifesto, I'm sure you're really looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to go over to Hove, where the Green Party is launching their manifesto. Here they are.
Sean, and it's so lovely to be here in Brighton and Hove with you. The wonderful thing about being a politician is you get to have conversations with people in your local community. Those thousands of conversations with people in hundreds of different places have brought us to where we are today, with a shiny new manifesto ready to be unveiled. Our manifesto is based on investing to mend broken Britain and offer real hope and real change.
Our manifesto is about the sort of country we want to live in, where we move beyond the politics of fear and distrust, the sort of safe and brighter future we want to build for our children, the sort of world we want to build together, a world where everyone has access to the health services they need, everyone has a warm and secure home, and we all have clean air to breathe. Our offer to voters is real hope and real change, and our manifesto lays out exactly what that will look like. This manifesto isn't more of the same. It's a look at what things could be like, and soon, if we're willing to invest at the rate necessary and to be bold and ambitious. We reject the pessimism of the other parties, who don't believe we can safeguard our publicly funded health system, that we can't provide warm and secure homes for everyone, that tackling the climate crisis is too challenging for us. We reject this pessimism. We're confident that our vision for the future of the country is one that most people share. Our manifesto tells you, that it is possible.
We plan to transform our economy for good. We can't go on with an economy where most people are working harder and yet getting poorer, while inequality keeps growing. We reject an economy based on unfairness and instead embrace a fairer, greener economy. Our manifesto lays out a bold but simple plan to bring our water companies, our railways and the big 5 retail energy companies into public ownership. We would end... This would end the rip-off of rising bills, appalling service and shareholders trousering millions. We would restore our ailing high streets too, urban and rural, and recognise their value to the communities they serve by investing in support for small and medium-sized businesses. We would overhaul our tax system to make it fairer. At the heart of this would be a tax on the very richest, the top 1% of people, requiring them to pay a bit more into the pot. From the Tories and Labour, we've been hearing a race to the bottom on tax. They think 2 pence off here and a penny off there will impress voters. And they think that people won't cotton on, that this means even more devastating cuts to public services like the NHS that we rely on every day. But that's not what we're hearing. On the doorstep, people are telling us they want something to be done about the state of our public services, about our broken Britain. They think there just must be a way to fix it. And voters in this country know that to mend broken Britain, we have to invest in our future. Greens have the courage to say that we would change the tax system to make it fairer and make this investment possible. And they're right, because here it is, a plan that would see billions go into the country's collective pocket to pay for the future of our public services.
Like the National Health Service, a cornerstone of everything we hold dear in our country. We launched our NHS offer last week, and we were so proud to hear the feedback from NHS workers. They felt that someone finally was willing to take the action needed to support them and the critical work they do every day. An investment of £50 billion, more than any other party, in health and social care to defend and restore the NHS. We would ensure that you can see a GP rapidly and on the same day if it's urgent. We would guarantee an NHS dentist for everyone. We would make personal social care free at the point of use, like the NHS. We would bring mental health treatment up to the same standard as physical health. And unlike any other party, we would say a categorical no to privatisation in our health service.
Sian has spoken about the severe insecurity in our rental market, the unaddressed crisis in housing. As well as our support for renters, we would provide genuinely affordable housing through our Right Homes, Right Place, Right Price charter and create 150,000 new social homes every year by the end of the next Parliament. Unlike Labour, we would end the Right to Buy scheme that takes so many homes that are needed out of circulation. And we'd tackle our energy bills too. Our energy bills are still sky high because we have the worst insulated homes in Europe. So over a 5-year period, we would invest £30 billion in insulating homes up and down the country to reduce emissions and bring energy bills down for good, so people aren't afraid to put the heating on when winter rolls around. Because a warm, secure, affordable home is something that millions of people in this country don't have. But it is so important, a basic building block for a happy and successful life.
Now, if you look at the other parties, the climate crisis has been pretty much absent from this election campaign so far. The other parties are running away from their promises on climate. Only the Greens understand that the solutions to the climate crisis are also the solutions to the cost of living crisis. The climate crisis is the most serious we face as a global community. Our commitment to you is that protecting our climate and nature lies at the heart of all of our policies. We won't give you fake numbers or spin the data, but we will strive every single day to take the action that's needed. So what are we promising? We would stop all new fossil fuel projects in the UK and cancel those that have been recently licensed, like Rosebank. We would be more ambitious than any other party when it comes to renewable energy, investing to ensure that our energy can come from wind and solar power. A secure energy supply and action on the climate crisis go hand in hand. Our investment in public transport, support to switch to electric vehicles, and homes heated without fossil fuels means we would put this country on path to being net zero years ahead of other parties. The science is clear. The desire from voters is clear. Now we need representatives in Parliament who are ambitious enough to make it a reality.
There is so much more in our manifesto that we are proud of. Plans to clean up our water companies once and for all by bringing them back into public ownership. A commitment to scrap tuition fees so our young people aren't burdened with debt for life. And increasing the budget for schools so teachers don't have to choose between books and biros. And a new Clean Air Act to safeguard our children's health. Now is the moment to be ambitious. Not unrealistic, but ambitious, to be clear about the kind of country we want to live in, about how broken our public services are and the action that's needed to fix them. Because we can have an NHS that works. We can have an economy that benefits everyone, not just the very richest. We can have affordable housing that's actually affordable. Think of that. We can have... we can have real hope and real change for the future.
Now, we're not expecting to form the next government. We're realistic about that too. But when the Conservatives are booted out of number 10 on the 4th of July and Labour take over, we plan to be there in Parliament in greater numbers to speak up for you on the issues you care about, like a revitalised NHS, bold action on the climate and a fair economy. Because with more Green MPs in Parliament, we will push Labour to stop backtracking on their promises. We will be there to drive them to be braver, to be more ambitious, not to take timid baby steps towards change, but to actually do what's necessary to fix our country and get us back on track. So this is our offer to voters, a manifesto that lays out exactly what real hope and real change looks like. An ambitious but realistic plan for the future that we can all be proud of.
The Green Party launched, they're clapping themselves, and the one thing I absolutely agreed with, of course, is when he said we're not expecting to form the next government. I would think that's a fair assessment.
Well, the joint leader, Carla Denier, who describes herself as a pansexual, non-theist Quaker.
Whatever
now,
that
do we
is.
know what a pansexual is, Stephen Pan?
Well, I have a horrible feeling I do know, but it's not the sort of thing that I could actually repeat on a family programme.
So pan meaning everything.
Everything.
Like pandemic.
Yeah. Pandemonium.
Pandemonium. Anything else?
I think you should be very careful what you get with this conversation.
Yeah, I think so as well.
And what is the other bit? She's a
non-theist Quaker.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's going to go well down well on the doorstep.
So if you don't want identity politics,
do you think we're
don't vote
just
for the Greens?
too democratic in this country and allow too many people from too many differing political factions to get involved in the debate when we're choosing a new government? Because even in this industry, broadcasting, every time you mention a potential candidate, you have to mention the 5 or 6 candidates who are running for that same seat. We're so democratic, it's unbelievable, and people take advantage of it.
I quite like that, though.
She's the only pansexual,
non-theist Quaker.
Non-theist Quaker. I expect she's the only one of those in the...
Well, I wouldn't put money on that.
That's true.
Maybe she's the only out pansexual, non-theistic Quaker.
When you were running for election, did you have to define your gender, Stephen Pound?
Not in the least, but I did have a large number of photographs of my wife and kids on the election leaflet.
Right, listen, while we're being a little bit silly, but there is a bit of a serious story behind this, Mike. The number of adults in Britain who are wearing nappies.
Yeah.
And this is a health story. Adult nappies are being used. Sales have increased by 13%. Last year in the UK, we spent a staggering nearly £250,000 on these products. 1.16 billion individual items sold. Why are so many adults needing to wear nappies?
I don't know. It's not a very attractive story, is it? You know, but it's something about the health service. I mean,
is it linked to dementia?
I don't think it's linked to dementia. To me, it's a sticking plaster situation because these people have got more serious conditions. Right. Obviously, we're all getting older as a society, so more people are going to have this problem. I mean, for women, we know it can develop after childbirth and this sort of thing, and for men, sometimes linked to the prostate cancer deteriorating as you get older. So clearly it's becoming a more frequent occurrence, and it seems to me that instead of addressing it in a way where we need experts to diagnose it, they're just saying to these people who come in, oh, look, here's a thick pair of pants. It's not really a nappy. It's
incontinence underwear.
Incontinence, and saying, you'll be all right, go home. And that causes both the distress, because people doesn't feel very good having to wear that sort of thing, but also no dignity, distress, but also the possibility they have got a real condition which is not being properly examined and treated.
But Mike, I mean, I spent 10 years working at the Middlesex Hospital, and a lot of this is to do with the nursing care. What used to happen, and we used to have, every ward had a sluice where we actually cleaned the bedpans out, and that was the porter's job, was to actually go and put the bedpans in the sluice. The nurse's job was to actually go to the bed and help the patient up to sit them on a bedpan. And that's what they're either not enough nurses, or they're not enough trained nurses, or they're agency nurses who simply won't do it. And it's easier. And you know, I know nurses are amazing, brilliant lifesavers. But some of them aren't.
True.
And the idea is that it's easier to wrap somebody up in an Inco pad than it is to actually come, excuse me, nurse, can you bring the bed?
That is exactly it. This is just a terrible... I was going to say it's a stain on our population.
Stain on our bed sheets.
These are people who are visiting their doctor or going to A&E, not people in hospital. It's people who are just being fobbed off.
I think it's both.
Is it both? Yeah, but for the ones who go to hospital looking for an explanation of their condition, and to be told, oh, all you need to do is wear a thicker pair of underpants, you know, you'll be OK. I mean, it
scandalous, this story,
it seems wrong, because we all know, don't we, that if you interfere with the urinary process in the body, infections follow very quickly.
That's right.
Can we move on?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm glad I thought we might be a little bit more childish on this, Stephen. I'm glad to see you being quite grown up. And baby nappies are a third of the price as well as these adults.
Well, I think one of the extraordinary things about life in the 21st century is my wife works she's at the food bank at the moment, and one of the things they have there is people come in and steal the nappies, disposable nappies from there, because they have a huge resale value. Now, the number of people who come and say, I've got 10 children, you know, I want a whole load of size 3s and size 4s. And it's because they
then they're selling them on from the food banks.
I know, because they're so flipping expensive.
Awful.
That awful.
Because, I mean, when my kids were children, you know, babies, we had terriers, because the thing with terrier nappies, you can then reuse them, and end up using them for shoe polish or just as a cleaning rag. And it's not that difficult.
In Japan, demand has now outstripped demand for adult nappies, outstripped baby nappies, that one company, the Japanese manufacturer OG Holdings, is now switching from making baby to adult nappies only because of the demand.
Yeah, but they have a hugely ageing population. I mean, a massive problem in Japan, where there are now the population, I think the median age of the population is about
also
60%.
the landfill issue as well.
Oh, God, don't go there.
It's just awful. I think it's a terrible story. Well, I'm sure you've got many years until you have to deal with this, Andrew, ahead of you.
This is becoming a theme today, Andrew Pearce's age. I mean, it's a bit insensitive when Stephen's about 20 years older.
Don't show a lot of respect.
And the rest.
How old are you, Stephen?
How old are you, Stephen?
I'm 75. I'll be 76 on polling
very
day.
well.
I'd have said you were 10 years younger than that.
David Davis was sitting in that just not so long ago, and he's 75 too. And I have to tell you, Stephen, he looks a lot younger than you.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Sorry about
Oh.
I realised Stephen was born on the 4th of July.
1948, me and the NHS.
You know what? He's the quickest...
The 3rd of July, actually, but I mean... Yeah,
and you're one of our quickest guests, Stephen. I love having you. And you, Mike.
And we do love you.
Right, we've got to move on.
You have a strange way of showing it, my dear.
He does, yes, believe me, he really does. Right, here's the latest news headline with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 11:31. Good morning to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The UK economy flatlined to 0% growth in April, a blow to Rishi Sunak's claim the Conservatives' plan's working. Retail sales were down. Construction output also contracted, partly because of the wet weather in April. The Tories pointed to figures showing the economy had actually grown in the previous 3 months to April. But the Lib Dems say the party's utterly failed to deliver on their promises, and Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says it exposes the damage done after 14 years of Conservative chaos.
It's this Prime Minister and this Chancellor that has presided over this state of affairs with an economy that's barely grown these last 14 years. Yesterday, the Prime Minister published a desperate wish list of giveaways, but frankly, the money is not there. And if the Prime Minister did have a chance to implement this, what would end up happening is that mortgages would go up by £4,800 for the average family. The country can't afford 5 more years of the Conservatives. Only Labour has a plan to grow our economy and tackle the cost of living crisis.
In the last half an hour, the Liberal Democrats have outlined plans to end what they've described as a sewage scandal in England and Wales. They've promised to transform water firms into public benefit companies, banning bonuses for water bosses until discharges and leaks stop, and replacing the regulator, Ofwat, with a tougher governing body. The Green Party's launched its manifesto with a promise to raise taxes for the wealthiest in society and ensure no one is scared to put the kettle on. The party would add a 1% tax on assets worth more than £10 million and 8% national insurance on wages over £50,000 a year. They say proceeds would be used to fund improvements to housing, transport and the green economy. And they've also launched plans to boost health and social care by spending £50 billion a year. Well, that's it for the moment, but you can get the latest on all of our stories by signing up to GB News Alerts. The code is on your screen. The details are at gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Quick look at the markets. The pound buys you $1.2753, €1.1863 euros. The price of gold is £1,813.61 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,196 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The woman. Oh, the gossip going on here. Tom and Emily are here.
Possibly what we were talking about.
Yes, well, I won't repeat.
What's going on the show today, guys?
Well, this Conservative messaging, it's changed rather a lot from vote for us for a good government to try and avoid a Labour supermajority. I mean, what on earth is going on? Have they totally, completely given up at this point?
Yeah, they don't. They know they can't win, so they're just trying to limit the scale of the Labour landslide.
We've been scouring over the social media adverts that the Conservatives are putting out. Now, these are targeted adverts, but if you go behind the scenes on companies like Facebook, you can see what they're targeting at various different people. And there's one advert in particular that shows a seat projection of the Conservatives in third place, behind the Liberal Democrats.
Terrible.
Yeah.
This is a Conservative advert.
Yeah.
And they're genuinely using these MRP polls that show that the Conservative Party could come behind the Lib Dems, that the Lib Dems would be the official opposition. And the Conservatives are putting that out. It's an extraordinary moment in the campaign.
People into voting Tory and not to vote Reform.
It might work for some voters. It might work for some voters, but isn't it a sad state of affairs where you have probably a lot of people in this country who are not voting for anything, they're voting against the other side. Lots of people voting against the Conservatives, lots of people voting against Labour. So there you go, that's the state of it.
There's no great enthusiasm.
Same in the US, though, too.
I agree.
Well, this is the interesting point. When the Labour Party win, and it will be a when, not an if, in my view, how long will the honeymoon last?
Not long.
If they're winning by default, this sort of, oh, they're all terrible, we might as well go for the other lot, that sort of philosophy, I wonder how short that honeymoon will be and how quickly, suddenly, this anti-politics feeling, which, of course, is being diverted towards the Labour Party at the moment, might well quickly be then diverted against them. I think politics has been incredibly volatile for the last, half-decade. It's not going to stop being that volatile when the other lot get out.
I'm sure you've been talking about that survey about trust in politics.
No.
Rock bottom. Well, there's a new survey of quite a few people.
I saw that headline this morning. I'm glad you're handling that this afternoon. Really interesting as to why people don't trust politicians.
Yeah, rock bottom. So, yes, I think that does go into that narrative of people voting against something.
And a 6-week election campaign is not going to change anything. It's going to make them trust politicians even less.
Well, there's all these promises. You know, you've got billions of tax cuts from the Conservatives. You've got Rachel Reeves not telling us which taxes she's going to raise. Well, you've got the Greens there saying, oh, wealth tax will fix everything. Yeah, well, people don't buy it, do they?
They're going to take all those
because
utilities
of course, billionaires will of course be delighted
to give up their assets.
Be delighted to stay in a country that wants to take away their assets, because we know that no billionaires at all like to, move to New York or to Los Angeles or to San Francisco.
Right, Emily and Tom from Midday. For now, though, we're going to be telling you why the war on cars is hitting young people so hard. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
In fact, you've got some
very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't. I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting? What's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yeah.
Well, there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking, and all the rest of it. On the flip side, I know a couple who, the pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. So I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar. We used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with, she was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political. You wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We're both breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running out of time.
Not as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're going to cross live, not live actually, to Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. He's campaigning in Humberside. He says that there are no financial holes in his manifesto.
Except some potholes.
All of our plans are fully costed, fully funded. There'll be no increase in income tax, in national insurance or VAT. And we'll launch our manifesto tomorrow. There'll be no tax surprises, and none of our plans require tax rises over and above the rises that we've already set out. But what you will see tomorrow is a plan for the future of the country, a manifesto that sets out how we will rebuild and renew the country, and sets out the first steps that we will take in government on day one to set us down that path of renewal and rebuilding. So it'll be a very different manifesto to the one that the Tories unveiled yesterday.
When you ran for the leadership, you said you wouldn't trash Jeremy Corbyn's record. Yesterday, you went out of your way to trash his manifesto. Why should people trust you?
The point I was making is this, that the one thing that everybody expected and needed from Rishi Sunak was stability after the disaster of Liz Truss. What he's now done is become the latest version of Liz Truss with unfunded commitments. And I think the public know, voters know, that there's a cost to that and they want an alternative. And that's why I'm really pleased that tomorrow in our manifesto we will take a different approach. We will set out the case for growth, for rebuilding, for putting our nation first to go forward. And we'll set out, of course, our first steps in government, steps that we will be able to do on day one to get going on the health service, on energy, on recruiting the teachers we need in our schools. So we'll be looking forward to putting that forward tomorrow.
OK, and the ITV question. Rishi Sunak told ITV News that he had to go without Sky TV when he was growing up. How sorry for the Prime Minister do you feel?
Well, I'm going to resist the temptation to be drawn into commenting on what Rishi Sunak may or may not have had when he was growing up. What I do know and what I will say is this, that he was supposed to provide the stability after the disaster of Liz Truss, but he's become the latest Tory version of her with unfunded promises in his manifesto. And across the country, people know there's a cost to that. They want an alternative to that. Tomorrow they'll see that alternative because we'll set out a manifesto full of hope, of change, setting out how we will rebuild and renew the country, including the first steps that we will take on day one if we come in to serve this country.
OK. Was Keir Starmer this morning. Do you want to say how much you enjoyed that?
Well, I just think it's just dull, isn't it?
Yes,
Get a grip of it. I mean, we know his campaign. They're so far ahead. Just be risk-averse, very cautious. Don't say anything which is hostage to fortune.
Do you know who's not dull?
Where's the radicalism?
Our viewers. Jacqueline says, do not put the Greens back on the screen, please, GB News. I need to go and have a lie down now. I'd like to see more Nigel Farage, please. Right, but we're going to go on to Sir Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader. He's been talking to reporters in Warwickshire.
In his wetsuit?
With the water companies being allowed by the Conservatives to keep pumping their filthy sewage into our rivers, our lakes, to our beaches and seas, and it's got to end. So we keep coming back to them. I'm not going to apologise for that. We've explained how serious the problem is to our environment, to public health, and it affects leisure activities. So here we are, having some fun, yeah, but making the point that millions of people like going into water, like swimming, like paddleboarding, like doing other water sports. And if we don't clean the water up properly, they won't be able to enjoy that, as well as it being damaging to the environment and public health. So we're saying today, let's have a tougher new regulator. We're calling it the Clean Water Authority. And it backs up all the Liberal Democrat policies to end this sewage scandal.
How much more power will you give that authority over Ofwat? And also, what will you do in Scotland? Because obviously this is a devolved issue. Scotland, Northern Ireland have different types of regulation. And then one quick factual question, where's it going to be based?
Well, first of all, it would have all the powers at Ofwat and much more. So there are powers that lie with the Environment Agency that could come in, powers that lie with the Drinking Water Inspectorate and elsewhere. We get them into one regulator, so the water companies can't play off regulators to each other, and the regulator can actually do what the British people want, which is to get clean water. We would work with our Scottish colleagues, our Welsh colleagues in Northern Ireland. They are devolved, they can decide what they want to do, but I'm sure they share our ambition. Certainly Scottish Liberal Democrats and the Welsh Liberal Democrats share our ambition to clean up water across the United Kingdom. In terms of where it would be based, I think it should be based in one of the areas that's been most hit by this sewage scandal.
You will be aware of the GDP figures which are out today. What is your view of what that tells us about where the economy's going, and perhaps about the Conservatives' decision to go now for an election rather than waiting?
Well, as the time ticks away from Rishi Sunak and his premiership, as he has his last few days in office, I'm afraid the economy is petering too. The Conservatives promised to grow the economy, to make it more prosperous, and they failed utterly. And whether it's the cost of living, which has hit people so hard, with the energy bills, the rent, the mortgages, the food bills, and the Conservatives have done nothing to help with that, or whether it's the economy not growing properly. The Conservatives have so mismanaged our economy, from Liz Truss's appalling mini-budget to Rishi Sunak's failures. They should get out of the way, and Liberal Democrats have some really attractive, positive ideas to rebuild our economy and help people with the cost of living.
Sky News is hosting.
That was Ed Davey. And frankly, if there are Liberal Democrats who are in there making a noise about clean water, then great. We need the next government to do something about the state of our water.
And the Lib Dems have really owned this campaign.
Yeah,
They've done it very well. They've been banging on about it for a long time because it is disgusting how much sewage and pollution is being pumped into the rivers by water companies, and the directors take fat directorships. Take fat dividends out of the company.
We said that Keir Starmer was in Humberside. I'd love for you getting in touch to say it doesn't exist, Bev. You didn't say, you idiot, but you kind of did. It ended in 1996. It's Lincolnshire or East Yorkshire, depending on where you are. Apologies for that mistake. Right, let's take a quick break, but still to come, we're going to tell you why young people are giving up with cars. Really, they've got no choice but to do so. Very depressing. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many, it's a good-looking day out there. It's not particularly warm, although with a bit less of a breeze, it does feel a bit warmer at least than yesterday. Less windy because the isobars are opening up, high pressure is moving in, but out in the Atlantic, there is plenty of wet weather. That's for tomorrow. But back to today, and there are a few showers around, scattered across northeastern Scotland, one or two across eastern parts of England. But for most places, it's dry. Yes, some cloud developing, but a mixture of cloud and sunny spells through the afternoon. We'll see temperatures ticking up to mid to high teens. Still feeling pretty chilly in the east, but as I said, the wind's at least a little lighter than yesterday, so it doesn't feel quite as fresh as it did then. Going to turn quite cool quite quickly this evening, however. Still a few showers just drifting in on the northerly breeze across the Northern Isles, perhaps into the north of Aberdeenshire, but most places will be dry this evening. Some good spells of sunshine across western Scotland. Generally fine conditions too for Northern Ireland, although at times it will be fairly cloudy here to end the day. Mixture of cloud and sunny spells for England and Wales. Still, as I said, one or two isolated showers across the east. And those temperatures starting to drop away as soon as the sun sets. It's going to be a pretty cold nights yet again, but out west we are seeing signs of a change. The cloud thickening up across Northern Ireland, the winds picking up as well, and rain trickling into Northern Ireland by the end of the night. For most, though, it's a dry night and a clear night, and it will be turning quite cold. Temperatures down into single figures in most towns and cities. Rural spots, well, only 3 or 4 degrees for some, and there will be some ground frost in a few locations. Not for Northern Ireland, though, because the cloud and the rain moves in here. Wet starts tomorrow. That rain spreading into most of Wales, southwest England, southwest Scotland by lunchtime, and then into the Midlands and through the central belt by the end of the day. Much of eastern England will be dry, just clouding over until later on when the rain arrives, and it gets very windy around western coasts, particularly in the afternoon. Goodbye.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning, it's 11:50. Now, young people are saying that driving a car is near impossible these days.
There's apparently a shortage of 1 million driving tests, and car insurance has risen by, guess how much? 67% for teenagers in just 12 months.
So joining us now is Head of Insights of Auto Trader, Mark Palmer. Good morning, Mark. Give us a little bit of background on these statistics, because it sounds like a very bleak picture for young drivers.
Yeah, good morning. That is right. Yeah, young drivers. It's interesting to see the headline you've got there. Why does Britain hate cars so much? What we're finding actually is that young people really want to drive, but there are barriers in the way for them. So as you called out a couple of things there. So insurance costs have really gone up, and also there are just far fewer affordable cars for younger drivers to get into these days.
It is a war on all motorists at the moment, Mark, isn't it? The car is this radical symbol of freedom and privacy, I would go so far as to say. And what do teenagers want above all else? Freedom and privacy. It's a real loss for that age group in particular.
Yeah, definitely. Younger drivers have said, we surveyed them just recently, 4,000 younger drivers, and 70% of them think that owning a car has become more important to them than they might have thought in the past. And just for the reasons that you described there, actually, mobility, independence, but also they're worried about public transportation and whether they can trust that to get them to their place of work and so on. So, yeah, definitely younger drivers still want to drive cars, but it's much more difficult for them to do so.
On what basis can the insurers justify a 67% rise in insurance, Mark, when we see inflation now has fallen to around 2 or 3%?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not going to, and I can't talk for the insurance industry. Costs have gone up across the board over the last few years. There are a number of factors in that I probably could talk to. The first of those being really the cost of cars has gone up over the last few years, which is really a factor of the pandemic still. The long shadow of COVID is still affecting the car industry and access to free supply. Car costs have gone up, so insurers have got to cover that sort of thing. Repair costs have gone up, of course, energy, salaries, all those sorts of things. So just fixing cars has I guess, gone up. But the insurance business will be able to give you a bit more information on that.
So we're short of time, but really we're looking at the fact that in the car, almost, I was going to say in the future, but now as well, it's just for the rich.
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, there's still plenty of affordable options for people, and cars are just not, they're not a purchase that you can choose to leave or not. The car market, the used car market especially, is in really rude health. Plenty of people are still looking to change their cars.
Good.
But it has become more difficult for younger people to get into those cars.
OK. Mark Palmer there, Head of Insights at Auto Trader. We here at GB News, we love the car and we will support you.
I haven't had one for 30 years, a car.
Oh, I couldn't live without my car. Right, that's it from Britain's Newsroom this morning. Good afternoon, Britain. With Tom and Emily is next. We will see you tomorrow.
See you then.
Have the Conservatives given up on this election? Senior Conservatives saying that now the threat is Labour having a super majority. Have they resigned themselves to defeat? We'll have all of that after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another chilly one out there this morning. For most of us, though, it's going to be a fine day with lighter winds, feeling just a touch warmer than yesterday. But it's certainly cold out there this morning. We've had clear skies through the night. Does mean quite a few of us waking up to blue skies this morning. A few showers are possible today across parts of Yorkshire down to the East Midlands, East Anglia, one or two over North East Scotland. But most places dry. Quite a bit of cloud by this afternoon, but still some decent spells of sunshine, particularly in the west. And temperatures a little bit higher than yesterday. Still below average for most of us for the time of year, but with lighter winds, a bit more sunshine, it should at least feel a little bit more like June. Through this evening, I think we'll see those temperatures falling off again pretty sharply. Still quite a bit of cloud coming into the northeast. A few scattered showers likely to continue across the Northern Isles. Still some good spells of sunshine though across western Scotland. A bit more clouds across Northern Ireland come the afternoon and sticking around into the evening. The odd shower still possible over eastern England, but most of England and Wales will stay dry through this evening and some good spells of sunshine coming through. But as I said, temperatures dropping pretty speedily under those largely clear skies. It will be a bit of a chilly start again tomorrow morning. Signs of a change though on the way. Behind me the cloud is starting to thicken. The breeze is starting to pick up as well. So through the night it'll turn cloudy across Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales. But elsewhere generally clear skies and temperatures yet again dipping down into single figures, well down in some rural spots. Again, not far off freezing in some locations. Another bright start though for many central and eastern areas on Thursday, but here comes that change. Clouding over rapidly, rain for Northern Ireland through the morning, that rain trickling into West Wales and southwest England, steadily spreading into parts of southwest Scotland and towards the end of the day into the Midlands. Much of eastern England, northern Scotland staying dry until quite late on. Temperatures ticking up a little bit, but still feeling cool as the wind and rain arrives.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News. The